Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the crowded halls of Zephyr Station. The space station was huge and noisy. Aliens from dozens of different worlds filled every corner. Some had blue skin, others had scales, and a few had more arms than Jake could count. He had just finished his cargo run. 3 weeks of hauling supplies to mining colonies had filled his pockets with credits. Now he wanted a drink and maybe some fun before heading back to Earth space. The cantina called the Void's Edge was the kind of place his mother would have told him to avoid. Dark corners, loud music, and the smell of different alien drinks mixing in the air. Perfect for a tired pilot who wanted to forget about bills and broken ship parts for a while. Jake found an empty seat at a round table where 4 Carillion traders were playing cards. The Carillions looked like giant lizards wearing expensive clothes. Their leader, a big one with gold teeth, looked up at Jake with yellow eyes. "Human wants to play?" the Carillion asked in broken standard language. "Why not?" Jake pulled out his credit chip and sat down. "What's the game?" "Stellar poker. Simple rules. Highest hand wins." The Carillion showed his sharp teeth in what might have been a smile. "I am Grix. These are my business partners." Jake nodded to the other 3 Carillions. They looked at him like he was some kind of strange animal they had never seen before. He was used to that reaction from aliens. The first few hands went well for Jake. His luck was running hot and the cards seemed to fall his way. The Carillions started talking to each other in their own language. Their voices got louder as Jake's pile of credits grew bigger. "Impossible," Grix hissed after Jake won another big pot. "Humans are supposed to be stupid. How does he keep winning?" "Maybe I'm just lucky," Jake said with a grin. He took a long drink of his beer and dealt the next hand. 2 hours later, Jake had won almost everything on the table. The Carillions were angry and speaking fast in their own language. Other aliens in the cantina had stopped their own games to watch. "This is not right," Grix said, his claws scraping the metal table. "No human should beat Carillion traders at cards." "Cards don't care what species you are," Jake replied. "Maybe you should quit while you still have something left." The words hit Grix like a slap. His yellow eyes got narrow and dangerous. "Quit? No Carillion quits to a human. We make one final bet. Everything or nothing." Jake looked at the credits on the table. It was more money than he usually made in 6 months. But something in Grix's voice made him curious. "What did you have in mind?" Grix reached into his coat and pulled out a small platinum chip. It was covered with strange symbols that seemed to glow in the dim light. "This is a bidding token for the station's special auction tonight." "Very expensive. Very exclusive. What kind of auction?" Jake asked. "Widow lottery," Grix said with a nasty smile. "Rich beings buy companionship contracts with females whose mates have died. Different species, different worlds. All very beautiful. All very lonely." Jake felt his stomach turn. "You're talking about buying people." "Legal contracts," Grix said quickly. "Approved by station law. The females need protection and credits. The buyers get companionship. Everyone wins." "That's sick," Jake said. "Then you will not mind losing the chip to us," Grix replied. "Your cargo hold full of supplies against our platinum token. Winner takes all." Jake knew he should walk away. This was exactly the kind of trouble his grandfather had warned him about. But the Carillions were looking at him like they expected him to run. Like humans were too weak and scared to take real risks. "Deal the cards," Jake said. The final hand was tense. Every alien in the cantina gathered around their table to watch. Jake picked up his cards slowly. He had 3 kings and 2 aces. A full house. It was a great hand, maybe the best he had ever gotten. Grix looked at his own cards and smiled. "I have 4 suns and a moon. Very rare in stellar poker." He laid down his cards with a loud slap. The crowd made impressed noises. 4 of a kind beat a full house in any version of poker. Grix reached for the credits and started laughing. "Wait," Jake said quietly. He set down his cards one by one. Full house, kings over aces. The cantina went silent. Everyone stared at the cards. In stellar poker, the ace was the highest card, not the sun. Jake's full house with aces beat Grix's 4 suns. "Impossible," Grix whispered. "You cannot win." The cards were marked. "The deck was prepared." "Then you should have prepared it better," Jake said. He swept the credits into his bag and picked up the platinum chip. "Thanks for the game, boys." Grix stood up so fast his chair fell over. His 3 partners moved to block the exits. Several other aliens in the cantina started backing away. "Honor code," Jake said loudly. Carillion Honor Code says all debts must be paid. Everyone on this station knows that. Grix's claws opened and closed, but he could not argue. The Carillion Honor Code was famous throughout the galaxy. Breaking it would ruin his reputation forever. The chip is yours, Grix said through gritted teeth. But know this, human. Lot 47 is not what she appears to be. You may win tonight, but the price will be higher than you can imagine. Jake pocketed the platinum chip and headed for the door. I'll take my chances. 3 hours later, Jake found himself in the station's most expensive auction house. The air smelled like perfume and money. Beings in fancy clothes sat in comfortable chairs, studying catalogs of lots for sale. Jake felt out of place in his pilot's jacket and work boots. The platinum chip got him inside, but he still looked like a poor human among rich aliens. When they called Lot 47, Jake's breath caught in his throat. The female who walked onto the stage was the most beautiful being he had ever seen. She looked almost human, but her skin was silver and covered with blue markings that seemed to pulse with their own light. Her eyes were deep purple and filled with sadness. Zara of the Valeth Empire, the auctioneer announced. Widow of Commander Thek, hero of the border wars. Healthy, intelligent, and skilled in multiple languages. The bidding started at 50,000 credits. Jake watched as the price climbed higher and higher. Rich merchants and crime bosses raised their hands, treating the woman like a piece of art they wanted to own. Zara stood perfectly still on the stage, but Jake could see her hands shaking slightly. Her purple eyes looked out at the crowd with barely hidden fear and anger. When the bidding reached 200,000 credits, most of the crowd dropped out. Only 3 bidders remained: a fat slug-like crime lord, a cybernetic enhancement dealer, and Jake. 250,000, called the slug. 300,000, said the cybernetic dealer. Jake looked at the platinum chip in his hand. He had no idea how much it was worth, but Grix had seemed to think it was valuable. Very valuable. 400,000, Jake called out. The crowd turned to stare at him. The slug and the cybernetic dealer looked angry and surprised. On the stage, Zara's purple eyes found Jake's face for the first time. 400,000 credits from the human, the auctioneer said. Do I hear 450? The slug started to raise his hand, then stopped. He looked at Jake again and whispered something to an aide. The cybernetic dealer was checking his account balance on a small device. Going once, the auctioneer called. Going twice, Jake held his breath. He had just bet more money than he had ever seen in his life on a woman he knew nothing about. What was he thinking? Sold to the human for 400,000 credits. As Jake walked toward the payment desk, his hands were shaking worse than Zara's had been. He had no idea what he was going to do with an alien widow, or how he was going to explain this to anyone back home. But when he looked back at the stage and saw Zara's purple eyes watching him with something that might have been hope, he knew he could not let her go to the slug or the cybernetic dealer. Whatever happened next, at least she would be safe with him, he hoped. Zara followed Jake through the station's corridors without saying a word. She carried only a small bag made of some kind of blue fabric. Everything she owned in the galaxy fit in that one bag. Jake kept looking back at her as they walked. He had never owned another person before, and the idea made him sick to his stomach. What was he supposed to do with her? Where was she supposed to sleep? What did she eat? His ship, the Lucky Strike, was docked in the cheaper section of the station. It was not much to look at compared to the fancy ships in the premium bays. The hull had dents and scratches from years of rough landings and asteroid debris, but it was home and it was paid for. This is it, Jake said, opening the airlock door. It's not fancy, but it flies. Zara stepped inside and looked around with those strange purple eyes. The ship was small. A cockpit, a tiny kitchen area, a bathroom, and 1 bedroom. That was all. I'm sorry it's so cramped, Jake said. I wasn't expecting company. It is acceptable, Zara said in careful standard language. Her voice was soft and musical, but he could hear the accent underneath. Where do you wish me to sleep? Jake felt his face get red. You take the bedroom. I'll sleep on the couch in the cockpit. Zara looked confused. This is not the arrangement. I am purchased property. You are the owner. I sleep where you command. Look, Jake said, running his hand through his hair. I don't know what kind of arrangements other buyers make, but I'm not like that. You get the bedroom. I get the couch. That's final. I do not understand, Zara said. Why do you purchase me if you do not wish to use me? Jake sat down heavily in the pilot's chair. Honestly, I have no idea. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time. Those other bidders looked like bad news. Bad news? Dangerous, mean, like they would hurt you. Zara was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "You protected me from harm?" "I guess so, yeah. This is most unusual." Jake laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Lady, my whole life is unusual. Come on, let me show you around before we take off." The tour took about 5 minutes. The bedroom had a small bed, a closet, and a window that looked out into space. The kitchen had a food processor and a table with 2 chairs. The bathroom had a shower, toilet, and sink. Everything was clean but old. "The shower works with sonic waves," Jake explained. "No water. The food processor can make about 200 different meals, but they all taste like cardboard. And this button opens the emergency airlock, so don't touch it unless you want to die." Zara nodded seriously at each instruction. She treated everything like important information that might save her life later. "Questions?" Jake asked. "Many," Zara said. "But I will learn by watching." An hour later, they were flying through hyperspace toward Jake's home base. Zara sat in the co-pilot's chair, studying the control panels with intense interest. "You fly this ship alone?" she asked most of the time. "It's cheaper that way. No crew to pay." "This is dangerous work for one person," Jake shrugged. "Life's dangerous. At least this way I only risk my own neck. Your family does not worry?" "Don't have much family left. Mom died when I was 12. Dad disappeared when I was 16. Got an uncle somewhere, but we don't talk." Zara was quiet again. Jake was starting to learn that she did that when she was thinking about something important. "Tell me about your husband," Jake said, "if you want to." Zara's silver skin seemed to darken slightly. "Commander Thek was a good mate. Strong warrior, wise leader. He died fighting the Hegemony Alliance at the Border Worlds. I'm sorry. Death comes to all warriors eventually. Thek knew this when he chose his path." "How long were you married?" 6 cycles. "In your years, approximately 4. You loved him?" Zara looked out the window at the swirling colors of hyperspace. "Love is a human word. Valeth have different concepts. Thek and I were well matched. Our minds worked together efficiently. Our genetics were compatible for offspring." It sounded cold to Jake, but he did not say so. Different species probably had different ways of thinking about relationships. "What's going to happen to you now?" he asked. "That depends on you," Zara said. "You are my new owner." "Stop saying that. I'm not your owner. The legal documents state otherwise." Jake pulled out the paperwork from the auction house. The contract was written in Standard and 2 other alien languages. Most of it was legal nonsense, but the basic idea was clear. He had bought exclusive rights to Zara's companionship for a period of 5 years. "This is insane," Jake muttered. "How is this legal?" "Valeth law requires widows to be redistributed to prevent bloodline extinction," Zara explained. "If I remained alone, my genetic patterns would be lost forever. The auction ensures I am placed with someone who can provide for my needs. What if I just tear up the contract? Set you free? Then I would be a legal alien with no protection under station law. Any being could claim me as abandoned property." Jake threw the papers down in frustration. "So I'm stuck with you and you're stuck with me." "Yes." They flew in silence for a while. Jake tried to figure out what he was going to do. His apartment on Colony Prime was barely big enough for one person. His work was dangerous and unpredictable. He had never been responsible for anyone else in his entire life. "Can you cook?" he asked finally. "I can prepare Valeth foods. I do not know human cuisine. Can you fix things?" "Mechanical stuff?" "I have basic technical knowledge. Can you shoot?" Zara's purple eyes got very bright. "Yes, I am skilled with many weapons." "Good. Cargo runners sometimes run into pirates. It helps to have backup. You wish me to fight beside you?" "If you want to. Or you can hide in the bedroom when trouble starts. Your choice." Again, Zara looked confused. "You give me choices?" "Of course. You're not a robot." Most beings who purchase Valeth widows prefer obedience over independent thought. Jake turned to look at her directly. "Look, Zara, I don't know what other people do and I don't care. You're stuck on my ship for the next 5 years, so we might as well make the best of it. I won't hurt you. I won't force you to do anything you don't want to do, and I'll try to keep you safe. In return, maybe you can help me run the ship and watch my back. Sound fair?" Zara was quiet for a very long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than before. "You are most unusual for a human." "Thanks, I think." This was meant as a compliment. The rest of the trip passed more easily. Zara asked questions about the ship's systems. and Jake was surprised by how quickly she understood the technical explanations. She was clearly very intelligent, maybe more intelligent than him. When they dropped out of hyperspace near Colony Prime, Zara pressed her face to the window to get a better look at Jake's homeworld. "It is very brown," she observed. "That's because it's mostly desert. Not much water, lots of rocks and dust. But the rent is cheap and nobody asks too many questions." "This is important to you? Not being asked questions?" Jake guided the ship toward the spaceport. "Let's just say I like my privacy." As they landed, Jake wondered what the other pilots and dock workers would think about his new passenger. Colony Prime was not exactly cosmopolitan. Most of the humans there had never seen a Valeth before. "One more thing," Jake said as he shut down the engines. "People here might stare at you or say stupid things. Just ignore them. They don't mean any harm. They're just not used to aliens. I understand. I will be careful not to cause you embarrassment. You won't embarrass me, but if anyone gives you trouble, you let me know." "Okay," Zara nodded. As they gathered their things and prepared to leave the ship, Jake caught her looking at him with that same strange expression she had worn at the auction house. Like she was trying to figure out some complicated puzzle. He had a feeling his life was about to get a lot more interesting. And probably a lot more complicated. Jake's apartment was above Martinez's shipping depot in the old part of Colony Prime. The building was made of cheap metal and concrete, but it was solid, and the rent was fair. Jake had lived there for 3 years without any complaints. Now, climbing the narrow stairs with Zara behind him, the place felt different, smaller, shabbier. "Home sweet home," Jake said, opening the door. The apartment had 3 rooms, a kitchen, a living room with a couch and a small table, and a bedroom. Everything was clean but worn out. The furniture came from second-hand stores and the walls needed paint. Zara looked around without saying anything. She set her blue bag down by the couch and walked to the window. Outside, she could see the busy streets of the depot district. Humans in work clothes hurried past, carrying tools and cargo manifests. "It is very..." She started, then stopped. "Small, ugly, cheap," Jake finished. "Different from what I expected." "What did you expect?" "I do not know. Something larger, perhaps. More luxurious," Jake laughed. "Lady, if I had luxury money, I wouldn't be hauling cargo to mining colonies. This is what normal people live like. Normal people, working people, people who have to earn their money instead of inheriting it." Zara nodded slowly. She was starting to understand that Jake was not rich like the other bidders at the auction house. "Where should I place my belongings?" "Bedroom's yours." "I already told you that. And where will you sleep?" "Couch folds out into a bed. I've slept in worse places." That night, Jake lay on the fold-out couch and listened to strange sounds coming from the bedroom. Soft humming that sounded like music, but not quite. Sometimes he heard her talking quietly in the Valeth language, though there was no one else to talk to. In the morning, he found her in the kitchen, studying his food processor with intense concentration. "Problem?" he asked. "I am attempting to understand how this device works. The programming seems quite limited. It's a basic model, cheap and simple. May I examine the internal components?" Jake shrugged. "Knock yourself out. But if you break it, we're eating ration bars for a month." 2 hours later, the food processor was in pieces all over the kitchen table. Zara had every circuit board and wire laid out in neat rows. Jake watched nervously as she worked. "Please tell me you know how to put that back together." "Of course." Zara's hands moved quickly, connecting wires and replacing components. "I am making modifications to improve efficiency and expand the menu options." "You know how to do that?" Valeth children learn basic electronics before they learn to read. This technology is quite primitive by our standards. When she finished, the food processor looked the same on the outside. But when Jake tried to make breakfast, the menu had 3 times as many options, and the coffee actually tasted like coffee instead of burnt water. "That's amazing," Jake said, taking another sip. "What else can you fix?" "What requires fixing?" Jake pointed to a list on the refrigerator. "Shower's too cold. Air recycler makes weird noises and the door lock sticks sometimes." By the end of the week, everything on the list was fixed. The shower had perfect temperature control. The air recycler was silent and the door lock worked like new. Jake was starting to realize that having Zara around was like having a live-in engineer. "How do you know all this stuff?" he asked one evening as she adjusted the apartment's heating system. "Standard Valeth education. We are taught to understand and maintain our technology from a young age." "All of you?" "Yes. A society that cannot maintain its tools will not survive long in space. Jake thought about his own education. Basic math, simple reading, job training for cargo handling. No one had ever taught him to fix anything more complicated than a clogged drain. Must be nice, he said. What must be nice? Having a whole society that actually prepares people for life. Zara stopped working and looked at him. Humans do not receive technical education. Some do, the rich ones. The rest of us learn on the job or go without. This seems inefficient. Yeah, well, nobody asked me to design the system. As the days passed, Jake began taking Zara with him on his cargo runs. At first, she just observed, asking occasional questions about navigation or trade regulations. But soon she was offering suggestions. The shipping route to Kepler's Rest is inefficient, she said during one trip. If you adjust course by 15 degrees and increase speed during the hyperspace jumps, you can reduce travel time by 18%. Jake tried her suggestion and cut 6 hours off the usual trip time. 6 hours meant he could take on an extra cargo run each month. Extra runs meant more money. Where did you learn about shipping routes? He asked. Mathematics is mathematics. Efficiency calculations are the same whether applied to military strategy or cargo transportation. You did military strategy? Zara was quiet for a moment. I assisted my husband with tactical planning. It was considered appropriate work for a commander's mate. Sounds like you were pretty good at it. I was adequate. But Jake was starting to suspect that Zara was being modest. Her suggestions always worked, and they often saved time or money. Sometimes both. The other pilots at Martinez's depot started to notice. Rodriguez, who ran supplies to the asteroid mines, mentioned that Jake's delivery times were getting consistently faster. Kim, who handled passenger transport, asked if Jake had upgraded his navigation computer. Just flying smarter routes, Jake told them. He did not mention Zara's help. Something told him it was better to keep that information private. In the evenings, they would sit at the small table in the kitchen and talk. Jake told her about Earth, about the wars and struggles that had driven humans out into space. About his grandfather, who had been a soldier in the colony wars, and how humans never seemed to give up even when everything looked hopeless. Your species seems to thrive on adversity, Zara observed one night. Maybe. Or maybe we're just too stubborn to know when we're beaten. There is wisdom in persistence. Tell that to my creditors. Zara asked about human customs and holidays. Jake explained Christmas and Thanksgiving as best he could, though he had not celebrated either one in years. She told him about Valeth festivals, where entire cities would light up with synchronized displays that could be seen from orbit. Sounds beautiful, Jake said. Perhaps someday you will see it. I doubt that. Valeth space is pretty far from here. Distance is relative when you have faster than light travel. Yeah, but I'm not exactly diplomatic material. They probably wouldn't let a cargo pilot like me anywhere near your homeworld. Zara was quiet again, the way she got when she was thinking about something she could not or would not say. One evening in the third week, Jake was reviewing shipping manifests when he felt something brush against his hand. He looked down to see Zara's fingers next to his as she pointed to an error in the calculations. The moment their skin touched, the blue markings on her arms began to glow softly. The light was gentle and warm, like candles in a dark room. Zara pulled her hand back quickly, but Jake had seen the glow. What was that? He asked. Nothing. A minor physiological response. It is not important. It looked important. Zara stood up from the table. I am tired. I will retire to my room now. Zara, wait. But she was already gone, leaving Jake alone with a dozen new questions and no answers. Later that night, he heard her humming again through the bedroom door. But this time the sound was different. Sadder, maybe, or more confused. Jake lay on his fold-out couch and stared at the ceiling. In 3 weeks, Zara had improved his life in ways he was just beginning to understand. His ship ran better, his routes were more efficient, and his apartment actually felt like a home instead of just a place to sleep between jobs. But there were things about her that did not add up. She was too smart, too skilled, too knowledgeable about military tactics for someone who was just a commander's widow. And that glow when their hands touched, what did that mean? He was starting to care about her, and that scared him. Caring about people led to getting hurt when they left, and everyone always left eventually. But as he drifted off to sleep, Jake found himself hoping that Zara would be different. That maybe, for once in his life, he had found someone who would stay. even if he had no idea what her glowing skin meant or what secrets she might be hiding. 3 months after bringing Zara home, Jake got a contract to deliver medical supplies to Kepler's Rest, a mining colony on the edge of human space. It was a routine job, the kind he had done hundreds of times before. But as the Lucky Strike dropped out of hyperspace near the mining world, every alarm on the ship started screaming at once. What the hell? Jake jumped into the pilot's seat and started checking the sensors. Zara rushed to the co-pilot's chair, her face pale with worry. What is the problem? Contact. Big one. Jake's hands flew over the controls, bringing the long-range scanners online. No, wait. Multiple contacts. A whole fleet. The scanner display filled with red dots. Dozens of ships in perfect formation, moving through space like a pack of hunting wolves. Jake had seen formations like this before, but only in military training videos. Hegemony Alliance, Zara whispered, and her voice was filled with fear. You sure? I am certain. Those are hegemony battle cruisers and destroyers. At least 40 ships. Jake stared at the display. What's a hegemony fleet doing this far into human space? They're supposed to be fighting the Valeth on the other side of the galaxy. I do not know. But Zara was studying the formation with intense focus, like she was reading a book written in ship positions and movement patterns. We need to get out of here, Jake said, reaching for the hyperspace controls. Wait, Zara grabbed his arm. Look at their course heading. Jake checked the navigation display. The hegemony fleet was not heading toward Kepler's Rest or any of the other human colonies. They were moving in a straight line toward Colony Prime. They're going to my home, Jake said quietly. Yes. Why? There's nothing important on Colony Prime, it's just a depot world. Zara was quiet for a long time. Too long. When Jake turned to look at her, he saw something in her purple eyes that made his stomach drop. Zara, why are they heading toward Colony Prime? Because I am there, she said in a voice so soft he could barely hear it. What? They are coming for me. Jake felt the world shift underneath him. What are you talking about?
Why would the hegemony want you?
Zara closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, she looked like a different person. Older, sadder, more dangerous. I have not been truthful with you, Jake Morrison. My name is Zara, but I am not just any Valeth widow. I am the daughter of Supreme Admiral Kith, commander of the Valeth Third Fleet. My husband was not just a commander. He was Colonel Thek, head of Valeth military intelligence. Jake's mouth fell open. Your royalty? Not royalty, but high-ranking military family, yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was afraid you would sell me to the highest bidder. Because I needed to observe your character before I could trust you with the truth. Jake leaned back in his chair, trying to process this information. Okay, so you're important. That still doesn't explain why the hegemony is sending a battle fleet after you. My husband was working on a new defensive technology when he was killed, something that could change the balance of power in the war. The hegemony discovered this and sent assassins to stop him. But he's dead, so the technology died with him, right? Zara shook her head. The technology is not dead. It lives in me. I don't understand. Valeth have an ability that other species do not. We can store complex information in our genetic memory and pass it down to our children. It is how we preserve our most important knowledge across generations. Jake stared at her. You're saying you have military secrets stored in your DNA? Yes. My husband transferred all of his research to me before he died. The complete plans for a defensive shield that could protect entire star systems from attack. The hegemony has been searching for this information for months. And the auction was supposed to hide me. The Valeth government decided it was safer to sell me into obscurity than risk having me captured by hegemony agents. They assumed whoever bought me would take me to some remote world where I would never be found. But instead, you ended up with a cargo pilot who broadcast his location to every shipping depot in human space. Jake felt sick. They tracked us through the shipping records. Most likely. Jake looked at the scanner display again. The hegemony fleet was still moving toward Colony Prime, toward his home. Toward all the people who lived and worked there. How many people live on Colony Prime? Zara asked quietly. About 50,000, maybe 60. The hegemony will not care about civilian casualties. They will destroy the entire planet to prevent the defensive technology from falling into human hands. Jake's mind was racing. Can you give them what they want? Trade the information for the safety of the colony? If I do that, the hegemony will have the power to conquer every free world in the galaxy. Billions will die instead of thousands. And if you don't, everyone on Colony Prime dies anyway. Jake looked at the hyperspace controls. He could jump away right now. Take Zara and run to the far edge of the galaxy. Let someone else deal with the hegemony fleet. But 50,000 people lived on Colony Prime. People like Rodriguez and Kim. People who worked hard and tried to build decent lives on a dusty frontier world. People who had never done anything to deserve being caught in an alien war. There has to be another option, Jake said. Against 40 hegemony warships? With what fleet? The Human Defense Force has 6 patrol boats and a few dozen fighters. They would last perhaps 10 minutes against a battle fleet. Jake was quiet for a moment thinking. Then he started laughing. Not a happy laugh, but the kind of laugh that came when the situation was so bad that it became funny. What is amusing? Zara asked. I was just thinking about something my grandfather used to say. He fought in the colony wars back when Earth was trying to control the outer settlements. What did he say? He said humans don't calculate odds when people's lives are on the line. We just do what needs to be done and worry about the math later. That is not logical. No, it's not. Jake reached for the communications console. But it's very human. What are you doing? Sending a general distress call. Every human ship within 3 systems range. Cargo haulers, passenger transports, private yachts, anything that can fly. They cannot fight a battle fleet with civilian ships. Maybe not. But they'll try anyway because that's what humans do. We don't abandon our own. As Jake sent the distress call, he saw Zara watching him with that same puzzled expression she had worn when he first gave her choices about sleeping arrangements and meals. You would risk your life for people you barely know? She asked. They're my people. My neighbors. That's what you do for neighbors. Even though the odds of success are mathematically insignificant, Jake started plotting a course back to Colony Prime. Especially then. The response to his distress call started coming in within minutes. Captain Santos and his old freighter. The Wong family and their passenger transport. Even crazy Pete Mueller and his ancient salvage tug. Jake, this is Santos. We're 3 hours out from Colony Prime. What's the situation? Hegemony battle fleet inbound. 40-plus ships. ETA approximately 6 hours. Copy that. We're on our way. One by one, human ships from across 3 star systems checked in. Cargo haulers, pleasure craft, survey vessels, anything that could mount a weapon or ram an enemy ship. None of them asked about odds or survival chances. They just asked where and when. As Jake watched the responses pile up on his communication screen, he felt something he had not felt in years. Pride in his species. These people were not soldiers or heroes. They were just ordinary humans who refused to let their neighbors face danger alone. There are 17 ships responding, Zara said, checking the tactical display, against 40 hegemony warships. Yeah. The odds are still impossible. Probably. You will all die. Jake turned to look at her. This alien woman who had become so important to him in such a short time. Maybe, but at least we'll go down fighting. And sometimes that's enough to change the odds. I do not understand your species. That's okay. Most of the time, we don't understand ourselves either. As the Lucky Strike jumped into hyperspace toward Colony Prime and what would probably be the last battle of Jake's life, he found himself hoping that Zara would understand someday, that she would see what made humans different from other species. They might not be the smartest or the strongest, but when it mattered, they never gave up, even when they should. The Lucky Strike dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Colony Prime system, just as the hegemony fleet arrived from the opposite direction. Jake had never seen so many warships in one place. They moved in perfect formation, like pieces on a chessboard controlled by a single mind. They are beautiful, Zara said quietly, watching the enemy ships on the scanner. And terrible. How long before they reach the planet? Jake asked. At current speed, approximately 2 hours. And how long for the human ships to get here? Zara checked the communication logs. The fastest will arrive in 1 hour and 30 minutes. The others will be scattered over the next several hours. Jake did the math in his head. So we'll be fighting in pieces. No coordination, no battle plan. This is not optimal strategy. No kidding. The first human ship to arrive was Captain Santos in his cargo freighter, the Maria Elena. Jake had known Santos for 5 years. He was a good pilot and a decent man, but his ship was built for hauling grain, not fighting battles. Jake, this is Santos. I see the bastards on my scanner. What's the plan? Jake looked at Zara. You're the expert on military tactics. Any suggestions? Zara studied the tactical display, her purple eyes moving quickly from one ship to another. The hegemony formation is designed for efficiency against organized resistance. They will expect coordinated attacks from multiple directions, so we don't give them what they expect. Correct. Human ships should attack individually without coordination, use unpredictable patterns, force them to respond to chaos instead of strategy. Jake opened a general communication channel. All human ships, this is Jake Morrison. Listen carefully. Do not attempt coordinated attacks. I repeat, do not coordinate. Each ship attacks independently using whatever tactics feel right to you. Confuse them, annoy them, make them angry. And remember, we're not trying to win a military victory. We're trying to buy time for the colony to evacuate. Jake, this is Santos. That's not a battle plan. That's organized chaos, exactly. Humans are good at chaos. Let's show these alien bastards what we can do. The first wave of human ships began their attack runs 20 minutes later. Santos dove straight at the enemy formation in his grain hauler, all weapons firing. The Wong family's passenger transport came in from the side, launching escape pods filled with improvised explosives. Crazy Pete Miller's salvage tug moved like a drunken dancer, impossible to predict or target effectively. Zara watched the battle unfold with amazement. This is not logical. They are attacking in patterns that make no strategic sense. That's the point, Jake said. Nobody can predict what a human will do when they're desperate. Not even other humans. The hegemony fleet tried to respond with their standard defensive formations, but nothing worked against the chaotic human attacks. Every time they repositioned to counter one threat, 3 more appeared from completely different directions. It is working, Zara said, disbelief in her voice. They are confused. Their formation is breaking apart, but humans were dying too. Santos's ship took a direct hit and exploded in a ball of fire. The Wong family's transport lost all power and began drifting helplessly through space. One by one, the brave human ships were being destroyed. We need to do something, Jake said. This can't last much longer. What do you propose? Jake looked at the tactical display, then at Zara. How important is that defensive technology you're carrying? It could end the war. Protect every free world in the galaxy. Important enough to share? I do not understand. You said the information is in your genetic memory. Can you transmit it? Theoretically, yes. But transmitting to whom? Everyone, Zara stared at him. You cannot be serious, and think about it. The hegemony wants that technology so they can use it to conquer other worlds. But what if every world had access to the same defensive systems? What if you made it impossible for anyone to have a military advantage? That would violate every protocol of valid military security. Zara, look around. We're about to die. Your people sold you to strangers, and the hegemony is willing to destroy an entire planet to get their hands on what's in your head. Maybe it's time to try something different. Zara was quiet for a long moment, watching more human ships die on the scanner. When she spoke, her voice was firm with decision. It will take me several minutes to prepare the genetic data for transmission. Can you keep us alive that long? I'll do my best. Jake pushed the Lucky Strike's engines to maximum and dove into the battle. Around them, the space between Colony Prime and the hegemony fleet had become a swirling chaos of explosions, laser fire, and debris. The old cargo ship groaned under the strain of combat maneuvers it was never designed to perform. Jake twisted and rolled, using every trick his grandfather had taught him about flying in dangerous situations. Almost ready, Zara said, her hands flying over the communication controls. I am encoding the defensive technology into a broad-spectrum transmission. How broad? Every ship, every planet, every communication relay within 50 light-years will receive it. A hegemony destroyer locked onto the Lucky Strike with its main weapons. Jake saw the energy build up on his scanner and knew he could not dodge in time. Incoming, he shouted. The destroyer's plasma cannon fired just as the Lucky Strike's port engine exploded. The ship tumbled out of control, emergency alarm screaming from every speaker. Hull breach in 3 sections, Jake reported, fighting to regain control. Life support failing. We've got maybe 10 minutes before the ship breaks apart. Transmission ready, Zara announced. Activating now. She pressed a single button and suddenly every communication device in the Colony Prime system lit up with incoming data. The defensive technology that had been locked in Zara's genetic memory for months began spreading across the galaxy at the speed of light. It is done, she said. Every species in this part of the galaxy now has access to the same defensive systems. Even the hegemony. No one will have a military advantage. The balance of power has been reset. Through the Lucky Strike's cracked viewports, Jake could see the hegemony fleet beginning to withdraw. They had no reason to continue the attack now that the technology was public knowledge, but the Lucky Strike was still dying. The hull breaches were spreading, and the life support system was failing. In minutes, the ship would either explode or lose all atmosphere. "Jake," Zara said quietly, "there is something I must tell you before we die. We're not going to die. Look." Jake pointed to the scanner where dozens of rescue ships were converging on their position. Human ships that had survived the battle, plus several hegemony vessels that were apparently following some kind of rescue protocol. Even so, you should know. The glowing of my skin when we touched, it is not a minor physiological response, and what is it? In Valith culture, it indicates the formation of a life bond. Something that happens perhaps once in 1,000 generations. When two beings recognize each other as perfect complements. Jake stared at her. "You mean like soulmates?" "I suppose that is the human equivalent, yes. But I'm not Valith. Species does not matter for a life bond. What matters is the recognition of shared purpose, shared values, shared willingness to sacrifice for others." Jake felt the Lucky Strike shudder as rescue ships began attaching tractor beams to the hull. "So when your skin glowed, it meant I had found my perfect mate in an alien cargo pilot who was brave enough to risk everything for strangers. And you didn't tell me because? Because I was afraid you would think it was just the result of your purchase contract. I needed you to care for me as a person, not as property." Jake reached over and took her hand. Her skin began to glow again, soft blue light that filled the damaged cockpit with warmth. "For the record," he said, "I stopped thinking of you as property about 5 minutes after we left the auction house. When did you begin thinking of me as something more? Probably when you fixed my coffee maker. Definitely by the time you started helping with the shipping routes." Zara smiled, the first truly happy expression Jake had ever seen on her face. "So what happens now?" Now we rebuild. Your technology is going to change everything. No more wars of conquest. No more planets destroyed because one side has better weapons than the other. And personally?" Jake squeezed her glowing hand. "Personally, I think I'd like to learn more about this life bond thing. See what two people from different worlds can accomplish when they work together. This will not be easy. I am an exile from my own people now, and humans may not accept an alien as your permanent partner. Then we'll make our own way. Together." Through the communication system, they could hear excited voices from across the galaxy as different species began analyzing the defensive technology. Scientists, engineers, and military planners all working to understand how this new knowledge would change their worlds. Jake and Zara had started something that would transform the balance of power throughout known space. But right now, floating in the wreckage of the Lucky Strike while rescue ships pulled them to safety, all Jake cared about was the warm glow of Zara's hand in his. He had gone to that auction house looking for a drink and some entertainment. Instead, he had found a partner, a purpose, and proof that sometimes the most important victories came not from superior firepower, but from the willingness to treat others with dignity and respect. As the rescue ships carried them toward Colony Prime,